Embedded P1G 101, more waffle hearing.
What happened?
Someone set up us the bomb. We get signal.
What?
Main screen turn on.
It's you.
How are you, gentlemen? All your base are belong to us. You are on the way to destruction.
What you say?
You have no chance to survive, mate, your time. Ha ha ha. All your base, all your base are belong to us. All your base, all your base are belong to us. All your base, all your base are belong to us. All your base, all your base are belong to us. All your base, all your base are belong to us. All your base, all your base.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cuddy's World. I know I've been absent for quite some time. That's because there was a lot of, let's just say, there was a lot of trials and tribulations backstage. I'm not going to get into it, but the main thing is I'm back. And I think I'm going to do more regular episodes of this program, or at least try to. I am recording this at 10:38 p.m. on June 13th, 2018. It's a Wednesday today. And what am I going to be talking about? Well, on one of my previous programs, I had discussed the 1980 Thames television series Cooper's Half Hour, that of course stars Tommy Cooper. And listening back to that old review of it, I think I came off a little too harsh on it, to be quite honest with you. Watching the show back most recently, I have to admit, it's not as bad as I originally thought. It's certainly not top tier Tommy, but it's not bad either. It's actually really a well put together program. Although there are some things that I said in that episode that I do stand by, I still think it was in poor taste to have sexually suggestive dance numbers at the top of every program. I mean, here's the thing. Tommy Cooper himself has said in interviews that he never wanted to rely on blue jokes or blue humor, even in nightclubs, because he wanted to be able to do what's called a family show, and he wanted to make sure that the kids in the audience, if they were watching, that they didn't turn to their parents and ask, what did he mean by that? And so I find it rather disconcerting that this program that features a rather family-oriented performer would have dance numbers at the beginning of each program that have girls wearing basically close to nothing. If they're not wearing dresses that reveal their lower bodies, then they're wearing leotards and garters, and it looks it would look more in place in a Wheeler and Woolsey movie than a Tommy Cooper program, to be honest. So that I do stand by. I still do think it was inappropriate to have those kinds of dance numbers at the top of the program. I mean, granted, I think they're the Irwin Davies dancers. They do a wonderful job. They're wonderful dancers, and they sell sex really, really well. But I will say, I felt really, really uncomfortable watching them gyrate their bodies that way, knowing what was coming after that. Here's the thing. Tommy Cooper is a comedian who rarely, if ever, uttered a coarse or offensive joke in his life. I mean, he's pretty much G-rated. And plus all the props that he has and the magic tricks that he does, it's remarkably inoffensive stuff. Especially compared to today's market where we're just inundated with comedians who choose to do nothing more than swear and get political. But again, rather disconcerting to have almost half-naked dancers at the beginning of essentially a family program. I still think that was in poor taste. However, there are some things that I said in that episode that I will, hopefully with this recording, be able to take back. And one of those was that I really hammered Danny Doyle. Looking back on his performance, I actually watching them again and again. I guess the show is the kind of program where, you know, if you watch it on multiple viewings, it actually begins to grow on you. And Danny Doyle's performance in particular grew on me as time went on. As I would watch these again and again, I started to actually enjoy his performance. I was actually watching an episode of the program today where he was singing a version of an old Irish rebel song entitled Whiskey in the Jar. And I found myself really enjoying his performance, and quite hilariously enough as well, I found myself actually singing along with him, and I enjoyed the song, and it's actually one of my favorite songs now. You know, it's funny. Tommy Cooper's television programs turned me on to like a lot of different musicians and a lot of different other comedians and other British acts that are virtually unheard of over here in this country. Like his 1975 series Cooper turned me on to Lindsay DePaul, and I guess Cooper's Half Hour from 1980s turned me on to Danny Doyle. I actually want to go out and look up more of his songs. So yeah, Danny Doyle, not as bad as I thought he was, not as bad as I had originally thought. Again, really talented individual, good guitarist, great singer. I love the song choices that he had. And I even liked it. There was one program where he and Tommy actually did a number together. And of course, Tommy being the comedian, obviously, you know, it was a joke performance. Tommy was sitting at a piano and he was wearing a raincoat. And it was, I think the song was about wind blowing and it was about the weather. And they took it literally and had Tommy wear a raincoat and play the piano. And there was like a prop horse that came into the screen that whizzed on by. There were leaves that fell from the air, which actually harkens back to an earlier routine where Tommy would perform at the piano while there was a song called Autumn Leaves Are Falling. That performance, I believe you could see on the Tommy Cooper Hour. And I thought that was great. I thought that they had good timing, good chemistry with that. And of course, the big highlight of the program was, of course, those times when we would see Tommy interact and do skits with his son. I mean, what little footage there is out there of Tommy Cooper and his son Thomas Henty performing is gold in my eyes, because, you know, Tommy, throughout his whole life, was really a solo performer. I mean, let me get into the story here for a minute. When Tommy married his wife, Dove, well, her real name was Gwen, but he called her Dove. When they got married, they were in talks of doing a double act. And thankfully, Gwen saw very quickly that Tommy's star outshined hers, and the rest was history from there. The only time that I truly felt, other than the performances he did with his son Thomas here, the only other performance that he did with another performer that I thought was really, really well done was the work that he did with his best friend Eric Sykes. The Plank. If you ever watched The Plank from 1967, it is a masterful British comedy, beautifully made. It's almost like an old Hal Roach, Laurel and Hardy short in the way that it's constructed, and Tommy, of course, being the Oliver Hardy, and Eric Sykes being the Stan Laurel equivalent. Great short film. Only clocking in at around 55 minutes. It's well worth your time. There's also a lot of great British comedy stars that show up in that, like Hattie Jakes, Johnny Spite, Jimmy Edwards, and even a cameo by a very young Jimmy Tarbuck, who was just starting his career, I believe, when they had made that film. And of course, sadly enough, Jimmy Tarbuck would wind up being the host of Live from Her Majesty's, which of course was the program in which Tommy Cooper collapsed and died on stage. So yeah, this show was not as bad as I remembered. Watching it back, I actually enjoyed this a whole hell of a lot more than the disastrous 1978 series, Cooper Just Like That. And that's something that I think I will go into as well. I'll talk a little bit about that here. I don't want to run too long. I'm only about 9 minutes right now, so I don't think I'm doing too bad. But Cooper Just Like That, the whole thing with that show is that was really a rushed production. It was rushed into production shortly after Tommy had suffered a massive heart attack in Rome, Italy. Miff, in his infinite wisdom, just to let you guys know, I have a lot of problems with Miff Ferrie and his managerial tactics. I think he is possibly, without question, the worst agent in the world, at least the worst agent in contemporary history. Because, the stuff, the shit he pulled, man, was just like legendary. Just watching The Untold Tommy Cooper, and listening to the interview with Sir Bruce Forsyth, was mind-blowing. So what happened with that, I'll tell that story briefly before moving on. Bruce Forsyth was performing. He was, I think this was in the mid to late 50s. He would host a program called Sunday Night at the London Palladium. And this program was a live television production. Bruce Forsyth at this time was getting real fed up with Miff Ferrie and his managerial style and how dictatorial he was. Bruce Forsyth started a catchphrase that was meant to take a jab at Miff Ferrie, and that catchphrase was, "I'm in charge." And Miff Ferrie was really upset with this. He hated this, and he knew that it was a jab at him. And about 30 minutes, or I think 30 seconds, I think it was 30 minutes before Bruce Forsyth had to go out on the stage and introduce the program, Miff Ferrie went backstage and, started an argument and started yelling and screaming at Bruce in his dressing room, saying, "I want you to take this out of your promotional material. I don't approve of this. I am your agent. I am your manager. And I'm telling you to take this stuff out. I don't approve of this at all. Take it out or consider your contract null and void." And without skipping a beat, Bruce said, "Get the fuck out my dressing room, and because I have a job to do." And the rest is history from there. But to get back to this Cooper Just Like That show, Miff rushed Tommy into this production. He didn't really give Tommy that much time to recover. That heart attack was in, I believe it was June or July of 1977. And this series, I believe, started production in February or March of 1978. So very little time for Tommy to recover from this. And at this time, Tommy was already I think he had been well past his 50s. I think he was actually in his mid-50s at this time. I'm trying to get my bearings here, and I apologize for any infactual information. And so when you watch that program, Cooper Just Like That, I will give them this. The stage is beautiful. I love the curtain. I love the lights aligning, the stage floor. It's the aesthetic is, of the stage, at least of the theater, is pretty good. But when you watch it, it's like it's the most low budget looking of his productions. The camera work is very static. Um, and I'm glad that this was the only theater-based series that he had ever done. It's really a disservice to a performer to have to, especially a television performer, to have to lock themselves down to a certain environment. Whereas in like a soundstage, you could change the environment however which way you feel comfortable. When you're out on the stage, you can't really do that. You can't, like buzzsaw the stage in half just feel comfortable on stage performing. And it also makes for bad television to shoot that way. It's much better to shoot in a soundstage for things of that nature. There have been exceptions, of course, like Live from Her Majesty's Sunday Night at the London Palladium, television series like that. But the people who worked on this Cooper Just Like That show from the New London Theater obviously did not know what the hell they were doing. And this was, from reading John Fisher's book, it was done by a group of rookies who really were like new at this. They really did not know what the hell they were doing. And the writers of some of the material really were just like, how do we write for a guy who's been doing this for well over 4 decades up to this point? How do we do this? And they failed tremendously. I mean, here's the thing. Because of the fact that at this point in his career, Tommy's health had just gone down substantially. I mean, just watch Cooper from 1975, and then just skip ahead about like 3 or so years later, and he's a groggy old mess. He's walking slow. He's sluggish. He's slurring his words. He's barely coherent. And you know what's sadder? Watching those episodes, watching that show, because of the fact that he's in such sluggish condition, they have to bring on vibrant comedic acts just to work around this rather tired old man. I mean, there's one episode where there's this whole thing of this guy singing opera in a bathtub. There's this one episode where comedian Sheila Barnett does a sketch with Tommy, and she's outshining him, and that's really, really bad. If your supporting talent is outshining the main build star of your own program, you're in trouble. So yeah, I stand by my sentiments in saying that Cooper Just Like That was the worst television series Tommy Cooper ever put on in his decades-long career. It's so sad. I mean, John Fisher himself described it really well in his book. Tommy Cooper always leaves them laughing. And just to note this, when I recorded the previous episode discussing this, the Cooper Half Hour show, I did not have a copy of that book in hand. So that's possibly another reason why I made the judgments that I did. But since then, I have attained a copy of that book, and leafing through it, just reading what John Fisher had to say. He told of a critic who made an analogy to Phil Silvers, saying that when Phil Silvers was in the twilight of his career, he performed as if he was underwater. And John Fisher attests to that, saying that some people in this series would have wanted Tommy to come up with a snorkel to complete the analogy. And that's exactly what it was like. Tommy Cooper was not Tommy Cooper. I mean, he was doing the old routines. He did the old Cockney routine with the ace of spades, ace of diamonds, ace of hearts. He did the duck routine where he had the duck pick the card. He even did his old piano bit where he pretended to play the piano with an arrow through his head. But I don't know. In this series, none of it was landing. And what was especially painful to watch was this one bit he did where he was doing Romeo and Juliet, and of course he was playing two parts. Watching him, do this routine is so painful to watch because it goes on for so long, because he walks from one end of the stage to the other, back again, back again, back again, back again. And it was going on for so long, and it grew tedious. And when Tommy Cooper grows tedious, that's a problem for me, because usually Tommy Cooper is a relief to me. Like, if I'm having a shitty ass day, I pop on one of his shows, man, and I just fall about laughing, dude, because I am absolutely in hysterics whenever he walks on, the set. I share the same sentiments that a lot of his loyal British followers do, and that's that, he could cause laughter just by looking at something. He could cause laughter just by clearing his throat. But here, this is not the Tommy Cooper that we all know and love. This is a different man. This is a man who has been brutally beaten down and is not. I mean, it's quite amazing, actually, the fact that he went from doing such a disastrous program like that to being rather vibrant in Cooper's Half Hours. He is really, really good in that. I mean, you wouldn't think that the same guy was doing the show, because he had his sparkle back for that brief time in 1980, in the early 80s, of course, prior to the Her Majesty's program. He actually was doing really, really well. I mean, of course, by that point, it was health-wise, he was at the point of no return. He knew that he wasn't going to live that much longer. But you really couldn't have told that in the Cooper Half Hour show, because he still has a sparkle, and he still has the voice, and his timing is back. He's doing well. And this is like about 2 years later, so that's why I'm saying, Miff really should have waited a couple years before sending Tommy back out to do a television series again. Because I don't think he had quite recovered yet from that heart attack. He was still walking, sluggishly, and he didn't really. And watching Cooper just like that, it seems to me like he didn't even look like he was enjoying himself. It looked like he was just going through the motions, and that was sad to watch. There were a lot of down points of that program, not the least of which was the Sisters Dwayne. That was, I guess, their attempt to give him a regular performer a la Lindsay DePaul. But let me tell you something. I craved Lindsay DePaul. Every single time I watched this program, I craved her. I wanted her to come out and sing Sugar Me, or No Honestly, or Won't Somebody Please Dance With Me? Because she is a marvelous, marvelous performer, great songwriter, great singer. I love her honeydew voice. But these Sisters Dwayne, it's like, there are moments in the MGM Marx Brothers films where people have noted that whenever the musical acts hit the stage, that's when you know to get up and take a bathroom break. Well, the Sisters Dwayne is my bathroom break. These girls, I mean, I don't want to knock them, because they are essentially child performers, or were. I mean, this is 1978, of course. But there's a reason why nobody's ever heard of them, and it's because they were really not that good. I mean, just watching this program, it's amazing how low budget it comes off. The cam work is static. There are times when they have, you know what it looks like almost? It looks like they shot it on a camcorder. And they didn't even have camcorders like that back in the day, but it looks like it was shot on a handheld camera most of the time. Because it's like somebody was sitting in the audience shooting this almost. It was like how, how local theater, how they, make DVDs of the plays that they put on. Those come off much better than this program. And it's a lot more professional too. I mean, there are times when you can't even make out Tommy Cooper. That's how far back, they're filming this stuff half the time. And then all the headroom. I mean, as a television broadcaster and as somebody who's, done this for at least a good 3 or so years, um, I'm just looking at this, and even from a technical level, it's bad. It's like the camera work is so threadbare. It's all locked down, and there's like no camera angles, barely any pans. If this wasn't, produced by Thames Television, I could have sworn that, this was somebody's like handheld footage. That's how bad it looked. It looked like handheld, it looked like old handheld footage. Amateur hour shit. And this is not, the Tommy Cooper this is not what Tommy Cooper should be remembered for. And there is a reason, folks, that there is no footage from this program at all to be found in any best of compilation. You will note that whenever you watch a best of Tommy Cooper compilation, it is mostly made up of footage from the Tommy Cooper hour, and at times Cooper's half hour. But you will never see any footage from this piece of shit in any of those compilations, because it's just so bad. I mean, I wish on YouTube I could post one episode of this program so you could just see how horrible it is, but unfortunately I'd probably get flagged for copyright by Fremantle Media, and considering how they've handled my friend Gary Wetstein, I really don't want to play that ball game with them. But if you want a good Tommy Cooper variety show, if you want to see how his shows were originally looked, like with the musical acts and everything, if you want to see how they originally structured, please go for the Tommy Cooper Hour or Cooper from 1975. They are much, much better. I mean, I would recommend Cooper's Half Hours just for the rather good Danny Doyle moments, and of course the moments with Thomas Henty, but because of the sex that's flooded throughout the production of that show, I really can't recommend that to anybody. It is a good show for adults, but if you really want to turn your kids on to those programs, please don't have them watch that. Please don't. I mean, I'm no prude. I'm far from being a prude, but when it comes to family programming, I have certain expectations, and Cooper's Half Hours just did not meet those expectations at all. But with all that said, I'm running at 26 minutes. I think I've said everything that I've wanted to say about Cooper's Half Hours and Cooper Just Like That. I mean, again, it's so sad to, watch the transition of his career, because of the drinking and the smoking and his various health issues, and how everything just took its toll. How everything took its toll on him throughout the years. And, just by the end of his career, he looks like a beaten old man. He looks like he should have packed it in years ago. But, it's a good thing that we have these programs to remember him by. I mean, I love Tommy Cooper. I want to stress that right here. I am a 23-year-old American. I have never been to the United Kingdom. I wasn't even born there. I'm an American-born citizen, and I am proud to say that I love Tommy Cooper, because that man knows how to make you laugh. He knows how to put on a good show, and there simply isn't anyone like him in the world today. I will say that. I mean, there have been people, of course, like Penn and Teller and The Amazing Jonathan and other folks that have come along afterwards, but none of them, I feel, have ever really reached the pinnacle that Tommy Cooper got in his career. And plus the even when you hear the legendary backstage stories of Tommy Cooper, of how funny he was even off stage, it really just paints a picture of a guy who just loved to make people laugh. Some people do it for a paycheck and just go out there and just rant and rave like an asshole for an hour. Tommy Cooper put thought and feeling into every single one of his performances, right down to the wire, right down to like the smallest prop on his table. He wanted to make sure everything was in its place and everything else. He was a really organized guy and really a smart, intelligent guy too. People don't give him credit for that. But I love Tommy Cooper, and watching some of those Cooper Just Like That shows, it makes me cry watching those, because I realize that man is hurting, and he's crying inside doing those programs, and of course the Her Majesty's dilemma is something that's to contend with as well, but I'd rather not get into that. Well, I'll go for about a good 30 minutes on this, okay? That's what I'll do. I'll be a little generous. Quickly, my thoughts on Her Majesty's. They shouldn't have sent him out there. He really should have just been at home relaxing that day, taking his time, taking a breather, because the telltale signs were there. I mean, when he got out on stage, he looked frail. He sounded frail. And even before he even got on stage, he had trouble. He couldn't even walk upstairs to where all the other people's dressing rooms were. They had to erect a special dressing room just off stage for him because he had so much trouble. I mean, if that's not a telltale sign that you shouldn't send this guy out there, I don't know what is. I mean, I guess it was like a Jake Roberts Heroes of Wrestling type deal where, even though he wasn't in the best of condition, they still felt the need to pay it off and send him out there because, hey, he was advertised. But, it's heartbreaking to watch that footage. I mean, part of his act in that was actually quite good. But, the last, I'd say, about 5 or 4 minutes of that act are just painfully heartbreaking to watch, because you realize that this man doesn't have much longer to go. Well, all right, guys. I'm going to be signing off here. It's 11:10 p.m. on Wednesday, June 13th, 2018. This has been Gino Cuddy, and this has been another fine edition of Cuddy's World. I will be back. I'm planning on covering more topics and talking about more stuff. But for now, I wanted to come on here and just give my quick reassessment of Cooper's Half Hours. And I also wanted to announce that I have a little project in the works regarding Tommy Cooper. Where I want to, discuss his career in depth. I want to have a Tommy Cooper devoted podcast. And I would love to have some people from, the United Kingdom come on, because, I would really like to hear, about what Tommy Cooper did from, an actual citizen, from an actual, native of that land. So I'm planning on doing a Tommy Cooper podcast, maybe not have it be like a whole year thing. Maybe just have it be like a mini series where we talk to certain individuals involved in Tommy Cooper's life. Maybe even talk to John Hewer. I would love to talk to John Hewer, who does the Tommy Cooper Tribute Show. And that about does it, you guys. I want to say thank you all for listening. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe on the Entangled Web Podcast Network channel. And please keep in touch. You can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/official Gino Cuddy. That is GENOCUDD as in David Y. There you can just keep up with everything that I'm doing. And you could also go and follow my other YouTube channel. Just look up Gino Cuddy. I'm sure you'll find it instantly, where you could watch episodes of my own original programming, Gino in the Evening, which is a cable access program that I've been doing for 3 years now for the Comcast Channel 15 television station here in Connecticut. And besides all that, I also have a DeviantArt that you could follow. Just go to ginocuddy.deviantart.com. You should be able to find my artwork there. But besides all of that, I want to say thank you all for listening. Thank you for being continued loyal patrons of this page. And have yourselves a wonderful night. Thank you so much.